The Farewell is a movie about a Chinese American woman named Billy and her family who all go back to China in order to attend a quote unquote wedding. However, we later find out that this wedding is fake and is actually just an excuse for everyone to go back to visit Nai Nai, who is Billy's grandma. And we see that Billy is very close to Nai Nai. And this wedding is staged because Nai Nai is diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, but the family does not want to tell her what she has been diagnosed with, as it goes against cultural norms and it's seen as bad luck. But throughout the movie, we see that Billy struggles to follow this, and she thinks that it conflicts with her own values, um, truth and honesty. But throughout the movie, we get to see the journey and the struggles of Billy, and see how the different cultural aspects and religions of China compared to America play into how Billy interacts and conducts herself with her family and everyone else.
In the movie The Farewell, Billy's sense of belonging and social identity is a source of internal conflict. Physically, she grapples with a sense of displacement as returning to China causes her to deal with cultural difference between her birthplace in America and her family's home in China. She often feels like an outsider in both cultures, unable to fully belong to either one. As shown throughout the film, Billy's identity is questioned by both her Chinese relatives and complete strangers. A hotel worker asks where she's from, and when she says America, he remarks, "America, you don't look American." And yet these same people make it clear to her that she isn't exactly Chinese either, remarking on her imperfect Mandarin and lack of understanding of Chinese customs. She also struggles within the family as she struggles to find her place with the differing generation and cultural perspectives. As she navigates between English and Mandarin, language becomes a symbol of her conflict. Billy often resorts to English in moments of frustration or vulnerability, highlighting her struggle to articulate herself fully in Mandarin and showcasing the gap between her American identity and her Chinese heritage. She also wrestles with the ethical dilemma of whether to uphold her family's decision to conceal her grandmother's diagnosis, grappling with the main question of whether lying to those we love can be justified in certain circumstances. Throughout the film, there are many levels of identity that become a source of confusion for those like Billy who are stuck between two different cultures.
In the movie Farewell, we see many differences in cultural values between the countries displayed. The Chinese and Eastern cultures have a much different view on life and death than the people in Western cultures like the United States. Life is valued more than the idea of death in China. In the United States, the burden of an unexpected death is put on the person who's going to die. In China, the burden of an unexpected death is put on the family rather than the person who's going to die so that they can enjoy their last moments on earth without knowing that they have an oncoming death. The Chinese also believe that it's not the cancer that kills you, it's the fear. This idea of hiding Nai Nai's inevitable fate from her would be illegal in the US, but in China, it is expected. This connects to the Cultural Dimensions Framework chart through the ideas of individualism and collectivism, as Chinese culture around death is very collective as they take someone's burden for their death, rather than Western culture where the idea of someone's death is very individual and all of the burden is directed upon them.
The farewell incorporates elements and values that can be associated with Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism, three major religious traditions that have deeply influenced Chinese culture. In Buddhism, the basic human problem is suffering, caused by desire and ignorance, and the end goal is achieving nirvana. The farewell touches on this through the family's acceptance of Nai Nai's forthcoming death without demonstrating sadness. This reflects a Buddhist perspective on acceptance in life and the destination of death. The film strongly shows Confucian values in the family's decision to bear the emotional burden of Nai Nai's diagnosis, protecting her harmony and emotional well-being. The scene where the family is bowing and providing food at the grave of Billy's grandfather is also a manifestation of Confucian ideals, demonstrating the family's continued respect and loyalty to their ancestors. Taoism emphasizes living in harmony with the Tao and nature. The family's choice to gather under the event of a wedding, which creates joy in a devastating time, reflects a Taoist acceptance and flow with life's natural course. Instead of confronting the harshness of reality directly, they chose a path that maintains balance and harmony within the family. Also throughout the film, the presence of a bird appears at significant moments, serving as a symbolic element to demonstrate the Taoist symbol of freedom and the natural flow of life.
The Farewell shows us many sides of globalization. In terms of economics, the film shows different money situations in the US and China. We see Billy's money troubles in New York and compare them to the wealth in China. This tells us about the worldwide search for better jobs and lives. In politics, the movie touches on identity and belonging. It shows how Billy and her family balance their Chinese heritage with American nationality. This part of the story tells us about the personal side of global politics. Looking at the environment, we can see scenes where they talk about saving polar bears. The movie hints at how the world is changing, a gentle reminder of how we all play a part in caring for our planet. Looking at culture, The Farewell contrasts Western ways of thinking about oneself with Eastern ways of thinking about the family. The story around keeping a secret from Nai shows how culture shapes our actions and beliefs. The Farewell is more than just a family story. It's a window into how we live in a world that's more connected than ever. It shows us how economics, politics, the environment, and culture all come together in our globalized lives.
Overall, we can see that there are vast differences in cultures, such as the idea of death, where in the movie they want to keep the diagnosis a secret so that Nai doesn't have to fear it, whereas in America you would usually just be expected to accept death. We also see that these cultural differences cause a struggle in identity for Billy just because there's such a large gap. And in Chinese culture, there are many different representations of religious values, such as Buddhism with the acceptance of Nanai's fate, Confucianism, the collective decision by the family to keep the diagnosis a secret, and Taoism, which is represented by the bird as a symbol of freedom or flow of life. And these are all just single examples. Lastly, there are many examples of globalization through watching the struggles of Billy, such as the individualistic ideas versus collectivist ideas, um, like family gatherings and stuff like that, but also just through technology, how everyone is able to communicate so easily. Um, Even though while Billy's there, she struggles to communicate with the different languages.